When my guest immigrated to the UK with her family, she had big dreams to finally write her novel and settle into a life of relative creative ease. But she was soon shocked by the harsh reality of the need to survive. In this vulnerable chat with Temitayo Olofinlua, we discuss what it means to fight for one's creativity as an immigrant artist. Being an artist can be a heck of a ride, but you're not alone. On Journey of the Art, we tell inspiring stories of artists and chat with those who support us on this path. I'm your host, Lola Opataya, writer, editor, singer, and all round lover of words. Come with me on the journey. Hi there, and welcome back to Journey of the Arts. I'm so happy, so glad to have Temitayo Olofinlua on the show today. Welcome, Temitayo.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy that you agreed to meet with me today. And when I read your essay in the Lagos Review about immigrating and being an artist in the UK, I could relate to so many things. So we're just going to dive into a conversation. I think that essay is a conversation on its own, and so I'm very excited to have a conversation with you about it.
Mm.
So in that essay, you talk about filling whatever gaps Brexit might have dug into the heart of the nation's arts and culture sector.
Mm.
Can you share a bit about how immigrant artists can contribute to the art and culture in their new homes? Do you think there's really a place for us?
Of course, of course. I think there's a place for us. With, say, the Global Talent Visa, which is the route that I came to the UK on, that was the intention, or that's the intention of the program to get people to contribute to the UK arts and culture industry.
Mm,
So every creative person brings not just their creativity, not just their talents, but of course, like their own individuality, their own individual vibes. There's a way you are not just like the body of your talents, you're lots more. And
mm,
when you move to a new country, you bring all of that into that space. So it's like a puzzle pieces, and you somehow in one form or the other fit into a part of that puzzle by bringing,
mm,
yes, your creativity, of course. So let me give you a clear example. For instance, I've worked most of my life as an editor and a writer,
mhm.
and I pick some books here once in a while. So, for instance, I read a book where someone made a reference to Gary and compared Gary to oats. I'm like, no, Gary is
Oh
not
wow, no,
oats. Like, if you
no,
put
not at all.
um
There's no basis for comparison.
hot water in Gary, it's not going to, yeah, like, no. So, for instance, now, imagine I was like a sensitivity reader or editor for that book. Of course, that would not pass through.
That's true.
So, there is that cultural knowledge, for instance, that can enrich the different industries
Yeah.
that make up different sectors within the country. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is an excellent example. Thank you for sharing that. And I love what you said about pieces of a puzzle, especially for a place like the UK where it's very diverse. There are people from all parts of the world, and
Mhm.
it's almost like a rainbow of cultures, you know.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you explain, the immigrant artists in the UK, for instance, as a piece of the puzzle, because
Mm.
with immigration all over the place, the cultures are changing. The North
Yes.
American culture is changing based on, and I say North American culture because I'm in North America, but just based
Mm.
on the people who come here, these cultures are changing. And I love the fact that you describe us as a piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
So, just following up on that, how can we immigrant artists contribute to a new culture while contributing however we can to the culture of our homes? Do you think we have to leave one to serve the other, or is there room for both?
Um, you ask, this is like a double barrel question, yeah, but you ask the first one as though you can really leave
Hmm.
that one to serve the other. You really can't, to be honest.
You really can't. Yeah.
Over the weekend, my son performed a poem somewhere around here, and the last two lines or so of it was about home, and the last stanza or the last few lines of it was something along the lines of he really didn't leave home because home is in his heart and he carries his heart everywhere, you know.
Hmm.
So like
Did he
you
write
really,
that?
yes, he did.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He
And how
did.
old is
He
he?
did. He's 11. Like all
Wow.
the confidence that I don't have. Like he was upstage
Wow.
performing to a crowd in a city called Stoke-on-Trent, which is about 45 minutes by train to Birmingham. That was our first time in the
Hmm.
city. So he had been invited by, which is also another thing that you know, it related to the first question you asked me about how we contribute. There's
Hmm.
this local organization called We Don't Settle. They have open mics. My son has always been like a poetry and he loves the stage. So we would
Wow.
go for the open mics
Looks like he
and they
takes
said,
after
"Oh,
his mom.
well, not the stage thing." Not the stage thing, not even the poetry thing, because well, I'm not sure whether
Yeah.
everyone starts by writing poetry, but I think I started writing by writing poetry. Then you know you do it and you're like, this isn't the
Not
kind of
sure.
poetry
Mm.
that I read. You know,
No.
like it's not the one. So I
Yeah.
did it and then I left it. Um, but he does it so effortlessly. So back to your question, we continue to engage with whom, you know, like we can't turn our backs on well, personally, yeah. I still continue to be involved in one way or the other. Um,
Hmm.
when projects that I'm interested in come up, I um render my services, continue to provide mentoring opportunities. Um, but even at that is also both ways, yeah, because um, you provide mentorship opportunities, but you also benefit from that mentorship opportunity.
Yeah.
So for instance, there's someone that we're working together who is back home, but she's so inspiring to me because I can get so caught up in my world, and by that I mean survival. Um, when you are
Hmm.
a new immigrant, there is the challenge of survival. Like the bills are
Yeah.
piling. The
Yeah.
you have to do so much so fast, and you literally don't have the luxury of being creative. So
Yeah.
what this mentor of mine does is that we collaborate, we work together to say, oh, this month, what are we doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? We are like accountability partners, to be honest. I don't even because sometimes it's me that is she's the one pulling me up, and at other times I'm the one pulling her up, you
Hmm.
know. So for me, that's been she's based in Nigeria, so it's a give and take kind of situation. So if I use that as a metaphor for the relationship that I have with home, is that you give, you take, you
Hmm.
continue to support, and then home also continues to prop you up, you know. You still go back to home for
Yeah.
material, you know, like you dig into the wells of home that you have in
Yeah.
you to continue to write. So you really can't like leave home behind. Because
Hmm.
who are you without home, you know? It's like a tree and its roots. No matter how big or huge the tree grows,
Yeah.
the roots are still critical, you know. So I think that's the way I see it. Your second question, I've lost track.
Oh, no, no. So the second question was, is there room for both?
Oh yeah, of
Like
course. There should be.
contributing to the culture. Yeah, and I think you pretty much answered that. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking about what you said about home, and I find that very curious because I never thought that I would be in a place where I would have to redefine home. But
Mm,
now, home is like, I mean, I tell people that I, I'm sort of on self exile, not as, I'm here because I had to to leave,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
And there's a part of me that yearns for home. There's also a
Mm.
part of me that's grateful for Canada that I call home right now. And
100%.
there's a part of me that will never be as comfortable as I was before I left. And there's a
Mhm.
part of
Mhm.
me that's here that still questions, why is this the culture, or how do I marry this culture with the culture I have now. So
Compromises,
home,
you
I
know.
find, yeah, so home I find is becoming a continuous conversation where I haven't really defined it. And it's almost as if home is in transition. And as
Mm.
much as I try to tell myself that this is home now, and it is
Mm.
in many respects, and I'm grateful for the life I have here, but there are things in my head that are still all over the place. A part
Yeah.
of me is not completely, you know I don't know, it might take a while. I maybe just I just need time.
So,
Oh, or
yeah.
maybe I will never get there, who knows. But there's a part of me that still feels a bit scattered.
Mm.
And that's why I asked that question about how you contribute, because
Mm.
sometimes I find that when I want to contribute at home, the the obligations here prevent me from contributing at
Mm.
home. And sometimes when I want to contribute here, what I define as home, what I know to be home, what is what I'm so comfortable with is far from what I have here,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
how
Mhm.
art
Mhm.
is expressed here. So that's why I asked that question.
Mhm.
And it sort of takes me to the next question about, survival. In that article, you talk about breathing under the weight of survival. And yet it seems that your creative well continued to flow. How are you
You
able
think
to
so?
maintain? Well, it seemed that way to me, because I mean, you seem to, from the article, you were popping up all over the place, doing something here, doing something there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Temitayo is doing so great in the UK. And it seemed to me, at least, that you wrote an essay, Tayo. Like, I haven't even written anything about my experience here, just because I haven't come to terms with a lot of things. And I
Mm.
think that whether you appreciate it or not, you do have a creative world that has continued to flow. Maybe not with the intensity that it used to flow in Nigeria, but at least
Mm.
it's something is springing out of it. And so my,
Mhm.
my question while I was reading that is, how are you able to maintain your passion for writing? How did your need to survive not steal
Mm.
your creativity?
Yeah, that's a really, 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 really deep question, you know. And it's a fight every time. Um, First of all, I should say I'm grateful for certain things. Um, about a year before relocating, I got a job that sort of gave me the um, balance, like the soft landing. That's how you Canadians call it, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
the soft
Yeah.
landing. Um, because without it, it would have been really tough. I would have literally
Hmm.
just had to find another world to fully make ends meet, you know.
Hmm.
So I had that privilege. Um, Even though after relocating here, it wasn't quite much, but I'm still grateful for it because
Yeah.
without it, I can't even imagine what that would have been like. And with it, it's still a job in the creative industry. So
Hmm.
it's an editorial gig. So it still sort of fuels my creativity, you know. For me, the survival end of it was now trying to get a better job in the
Hmm.
UK. And the toil of waking up to unfortunately is every now and then.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
rigor of reworking your CV of as I was even still having this conversation with another new immigrant recently, and we joke about it because when as we say when matter don't pass to the cry, you go just start to dey laugh.
I totally get it.
Oh,
I totally
gosh,
get it.
We were having this conversation and it was like, "Tèmítáyò, I have only one goal this weekend. It was a Friday night. He called me, it was supposed to be a short call. Um, and his question was, wait, so how are you doing this employment thing? Because
It's
this
really a
weekend, yes,
challenge. Yeah.
he said, this weekend, I have only one goal. I'm going to remake myself before Monday. And if he listens to this, he will know I'm talking about him. Like, he needs to literally dump down his CV to the lowest dumping down that it
Yeah.
can get to.
Wow.
In it, he has two masters. He says, which of these masters do I, because one has to go. I must not be seen as I'm too intelligent
Wow.
because says I need to bag a job soon. I'm not even asking for
Mm.
so much. Just pay me minimum wage and let me pay my rent and get by. You know. So we're having that conversation. And for me, I've also been applying for other jobs. Because salary negotiation when you're back home in Nigeria is not the same when you compare the standard of living here. And I negotiated a salary
Yeah.
when I was in Nigeria. So um it's been challenging. But I've also, in all of these challenges, literally decided that I'm not going to allow the weight of survival to swallow me. So
Mm.
it's usually a fight. It's me typing on my phone when I'm on my way to the market. It's me trying to find creative communities where I know in those stolen moments, can be 1 hour,
Mm.
2 hours, there is no distraction of a child asking for dinner. There is no phone beeping. I can not only engage people within the creative space, but also like create. It's mean renegotiating my creative practice. For the
Mm.
longest time, I've always wanted to write a novel. But upon relocating, I told myself, can I afford the luxury of the solitary that I need to write a novel? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I thought, okay, what can I do? Um, in the past, I've written for stage. So I thought, okay, let's try this stage writing thing again. So I began to explore because unlike Nigeria, of course, there are more vibrant theater spaces here.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I began to look for the theater spaces, began to look at the opportunities that they have. I saw a writing competition by a theater here called Old Rep. It's one of the old theaters here. And I submitted. Funny thing, they were looking for all sorts of stories. So it was a story that I had written before. I submitted that. It was now taken on to be read on stage, like to be performed as part of other
That's awesome.
submissions that were accepted as well. I found a theater writing community called Writers Block at Birmingham Hippodrome. It's a quarterly meeting where people who um, write for stage or are interested, like if you are just interested, you want to write, you need a space where people come and read their works and you can get supported, you can get feedback that you can work on.
Mm.
So that's how I came across Writer's Block. And you actually submit your work, they read your work, they and you get paid for it. So I
Oh,
one of
that's nice.
my works got accepted. They got readers, people who read the work on stage, and so I also love attending the events because you get to meet people, you get to, oh, I enjoy that. Oh, how did you do that? But in addition to
Mm.
that, they also do things whereby you are invited to watch free stage plays. I just got around because, of
Oh,
course,
that's
in
nice.
addition to the practice, to reading your work, you also need to engage with other people's works to, you know, really see and understand what's going on in the theater space. So, for
Mm.
instance, on Thursday, I saw a play at the Hippodrome. and then you after the seeing the play, we chat about it and things like that. So there are so many spaces. So I've decided that instead of sitting down and complaining and allowing survival to kick me in the ass, I might get up and start walking around and finding the
Yeah.
spaces that can nurture me and make me a better person and a better creative. Um, while we are all at this survival thing.
Yeah, so that is very interesting and inspirational as well. Um, so what does that look like for you now? Do you think that you might be more of a playwright now, than an essayist, as I know you
Not
to be?
so
What does that look
fast.
like for you right now?
So with essays, I don't struggle to write essays. I don't
Hmm.
struggle. Like the essay you read on the Lagos
The
Review,
Lagos
I
Review.
bet I wrote it in a couple of hours. But before the actual writing, maybe I had this thing in my head for a long time. There are things that I've thought about. But the moment I sit down and I say I want to write it, trust me, a couple of hours I'm done.
Hmm.
But I also love the beauty of learning something, new or relearning. Um, so which is the journey that I'm on now. So while creativity may be the so the way I see it is that there may be many ways to reach creativity, quote unquote.
Hmm.
Um, some ideas come and I'm like, oh, this will work better as a short story. In fact, I recently got a short story accepted for a magazine. And also thought to myself, this would make a nice radio play. Now let's start looking for the platform that will be interested in this as a radio play because there's a lot of auditory things going on there. And so I usually look at things, stories, or ideas from a really broad perspective, and consider different forms that it can exist in.
Hmm.
I don't usually allow myself to be boxed into one corner. I'm thinking, so even now, because I edit graphic novels now, I'm thinking, oh my God, how would this look as a graphic novel? And in editing,
Yeah.
you also have to upskill to
Yeah.
understand what it means to not only edit but to write within that particular world. So
Hmm.
um, that's what it looks like for me. It's a lot of learning, it's a
Yeah.
lot of relearning, it's a lot of um, crafting. Many times when we talk writing, we really there's a lot of inspiration, muse, but there's also a lot of
Hmm.
behind the scenes, picking apart, uh,
Yes.
bringing things together. So that's what it's like for me right now. Like,
Yeah.
okay, asking questions about what would this idea really look like, in what form, and experimenting. So yes, technically that.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like what has kept your creativity going is just being open minded, and looking for opportunities where your creativity can flow. And that's
Yes.
amazing because can't say the same for myself.
Why
So
though?
it's very interesting. Oh, I think when I say we, because I'm talking about my family and I,
Mm, mm,
before we came to Canada, I'd sort of taken an artistic break, if that makes
okay.
any
Mm,
sense. So there was already a disconnect because I had come to a point where I was disillusioned about, my artistry, and I was just done. Um, so when we came to Canada, I went into full survival mode.
mm,
How do I secure the bag? How do I make sure that my kids are settled in, that we're settling as a family? What do the
mm,
schools look like? Where are we getting a place? Like, all the things that
yeah.
are
Mm,
involved with settling into a new country.
mm,
And so I think it's only recently that I have started to go back to my
mm,
roots. And
mm,
by recently, I mean this year.
mm,
I mean, it's not that I haven't done anything. I haven't written anything.
mm,
I
mm,
wrote an entire novella in 2022. So there are. there are moments where I have leaned into that creativity. I've gotten stories published.
Mm-hmm.
So those things
Mm-hmm.
have happened. But I think that engine constantly working, where I'm looking for opportunities to, I see someone walking on the street and that person is already a character in my head. That
Mm-hmm.
used to be me. And I think it's only actually this morning that I started to think that way again. I saw someone walking down the road and I was like, hmm,
What's your
this
story?
person looks like an interesting, what's their story? Like I think this, because this person was not looking very nice, but they were carrying a bag that said the
Mm.
best is yet to come. And I was like, there's a story there.
Oh my God.
so
Of
so
course,
I'm
there is a
definitely
story
exploring
there.
that as a story idea. But just hearing you talk about how um, something can be good for a graphic novel or good for a radio play or good, like just exploring artistic expressions and chasing those opportunities, I guess, is
Yeah.
something that I have not been doing. And maybe it's that I've not been open minded, but I also think it's because I sort of took an artistic break and I'm taking my steps right back to where I should be.
Mm.
So thank you for sharing that. And again, this leads me to look, another question I was going to ask you. How has your living in the UK influenced your art? So I'm going to break that down a little bit. When I think about stories now, I
Mhm.
think about stories not just based on what I knew back in my home country, but
Yeah.
also based on what I know now in my adopted country, right? The
Mhm.
way I think now, the kind of things I expect as a standard,
Mm.
the social issues that are here that are completely different from what we have back home.
Mm.
And so when I think about a story, I come to that story with all of those things, all the things that I knew in Nigeria and all the things I know in Canada, the things I'm rediscovering. And
Mm.
it influences the way I want to tell a story. It
Mhm.
influences the way I want to, the angle I want to tell it from.
Mhm.
It influences a lot of things. So
Yeah.
my question to you is, do you find that to be your experience, where you're living in the UK has seeped into your creativity, and how?
Definitely, it seeps into your creativity, you know. Um, for me, there's a story idea everywhere. So I'm a collector of story ideas, even if I don't get to write or execute a 0.0001% of them. I'm the kind of person, when I see anything interesting, exciting, mysterious, I'm copying the link and I'm saving it somewhere. Or I'm forwarding the
Yeah.
tweet to myself in my Twitter DM, or I'm sending myself a
Yeah.
WhatsApp message. So I'm constantly doing that. And that was how I, for instance, came across this story, this material that became a short story. Someone was sharing about the first time she ever cried in UK. It was very funny.
Oh, wow.
And like the first time she ever cried, it had to do with one of her children and it had to do with a cat.
Oh, okay.
I thought, oh my God, I'm going to make that a story. It's going to be so humorous. And it was funny as I wrote it, you know.
Hmm.
And of course it seeps into our experiences, and it's not those experiences that we draw our stories from our wells of experiences, you know. So um there's really almost no how I can um write and not refer to my experiences in the UK. It's a bit, and because I'm always mining story ideas, I see something and I'm like, oh, that would make a nice story. Oh, type
Yeah.
it. You know, so it's it's like a continuum. It's like, and it's not just because, oh, I relocated. Trust me, when I was in Nigeria, I was collecting stories like that as well. Like I anything that fascinates me. And is when people ask me, oh, so what do you write? My response is usually anything that fascinates me, to be honest.
Hmm.
And fascinates me enough to research it because I'm always collecting. Then
Yeah.
uh to now have that presence of mind to say, okay, this is the one I want to write now, and I'll sit down and make the time for it and follow through and do justice to it. Which also sort of relates to the reason why I sort of favor essay writing over fiction, Aside that, personally, I usually think that I've mastered my craft of essay writing, if I say so myself. And compared to short stories or fiction, I still struggle because I need to now, okay, sit down to say, yes, this is material, but it's just material.
Yeah.
How can we make this material, okay, a refined product? This is material. This is um what's the raw material for petroleum again?
I have
Yeah.
no idea. This is why I studied literature.
This is
I
this is
have
raw
no
gold.
idea.
This is raw gold, for instance, Now it needs to go through the furnace, go through the process to become what it needs to be. So that's what it is for me. So no matter what, the person who constantly mines experiences, mine and other people's for writing purposes is still the same. But what I think has changed is the my own newly added experiences and knowledge just because I moved. So yeah, that was a long one.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I totally appreciate, that part of you that is constantly mining stories, because I think when you mine stories continuously like that, it makes you sort of flexible, and even being in a new place is not a hindrance because your
Mm-hmm,
mind is already adjusting to how the story can be told,
mm-hmm,
and exploring the stories of people that you've never met, people from
mm-hmm.
different cultures. So I think it's great that you touched on that part about being a collector of story ideas. So Timtayo, what wins have you recorded on this journey as an immigrant artist? I know you mentioned some, but maybe if you could talk a little bit about more of them, that would be great.
What wins? I was telling my friend recently, uh, my accountability partner, stroke mentee, stroke. Yes. So I was telling her recently that as new and that was like the sentence that ended the essay I wrote for Miss Lexia.
Mm-hmm.
We're always waiting for the big win,
Mm-hmm.
but how about we celebrate and enjoy the small wins? And for a long time, I think I was sort of deprived of joy. Not joy, like I wasn't, you want something so bad. For instance, you say, "Oh, I want that big job," but because you've been applying, 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 and that big job is not coming. You know what? I just said, I'm not going to let this one steal my joy. I'm gonna go out and continue to write my essays and pitch them. I will write my short stories and try to place them. I will go to Birmingham Hippodrome and enjoy writer's block with fellow creatives. That shift in perspective, sort of helped me to reevaluate myself and what I call wins. So it's not one big thing. Once upon a time, it used to be, oh, when my novel is published. But when you realize that, you'll be waiting for when your novel is published.
Yeah, yeah,
How about you?
yeah, and like even the little things like you having your story accepted, with
Yes,
the play. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's not
yes,
$1 million, but it's $1 million,
yes,
depending on how
yes,
you're looking
yes,
at it.
yes, yes. So that, and even the some things that so it's like a privilege sometimes when you look
Hmm.
at, say, the UK visa situation, um, and you being on a global talent visa where that is not as stressful. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have its own, you still have to gather the funds to apply for your ILR,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have as much restrictions as other visa kinds. and you can explore your creativity without the weight of certain financial obligations attached to the
Mm.
visa weighing you down. So that's
Yeah.
also something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And it somehow allows you to be creative in a way,
Yeah.
you know. It doesn't mean all the survival struggles are in there, they are there, but it's
For
not
sure.
as, yeah, it's not as burdening as several other spaces, you know.
Yeah. For sure. I totally get that. And I think that is a wonderful perspective to have. It's constant gratitude for wherever you're at, whether your story
Mm-hmm.
is accepted, whether your art is accepted or not, but just even being in a position to be able to be creative without,
Yes,
those burdens that you talked about. That's
yes.
wonderful. So Tayo, as we round up, what advice would you give artists who are looking to immigrate to other countries?
Um, Before I do the advice thing, there's also a win that I would like to talk about,
Of course.
um, which is also associated to the global talent visa. So one of the perks of the visa is you being able to, you can own a company even while you continue to work within your creative space.
Oh,
So
awesome.
I started Stories Click, which is a storytelling company that uses words and pictures to tell stories. My partner is a photographer, so we work together. Um, Again, grateful for the gift of writing,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I don't just see it as some, not boxing it up to one space or to one kind of practice, but being able to use writing across several spaces is a gift that keeps on giving, as long as you figure out how to mine it for the purpose you want to use it for. So yes,
Mm.
that. And you asked about advice to any
Yes.
young person who wants to migrate.
I mean, the person, they could be young or not, but just anyone who's looking to, you know, be anyone who's looking to leave their countries to go elsewhere to continue
Mhm,
to do their art. What advice would you give them?
mhm. Um, I think it's important for you to properly evaluate your why,
Mm.
because at different points in time you just want to pack your bag and go back home.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You want to pack your bag and go back home. But if you understand your why, you can weather the storm. You know, the some people have it relatively easy, and it's first defining your why, and then you need to ask yourself about your how. So it's easy to say you want to move. It's People come on visiting visas and not go back. They've moved.
Mm.
But how do they survive through
Yeah.
that experience following that? So it's you evaluating how you want to make the journey. And of course, under this how would be research. Where are you going? Why? Even to the nitty-gritty of what cities you want to live in,
Mm.
what are the creative spaces in that city that can help your creative practice become better. So those questions are quite critical, because there are some cities that would perhaps say favor poetry, or there are some cities that may favor, maybe they have a really nice residency that is like a 2 year stay. And you know that if I
Mm.
get that residency, my novel will be done. There are different reasons why people move to different places, which is interconnected to your why, but also even like to you can break it down to smaller things. You need to figure out all these questions. It's not enough to just have that big dream. And from all this our earlier conversation, you likely already know that survival is critical, so
Absolutely.
it's, even though creativity, writing, or whatever your craft is ongoing, it's also still important to figure out, how am I going to make ends meet? Um, it may be with your creative practice, and it may be with something else. So, um, people would advise, oh, find a skill, find something else, find something that, if you can find something that you derive joy in, great. But people have to do different things that just pay the
Yeah.
bills. Whatever it is, um, also again, have a timeline, for it. If you are not doing something that, um, say, gives you joy, still think, okay, this thing has a deadline. What's my strategy for getting out? It's like, we all did jobs at different points in time, even back home, that we didn't quite like, but we told ourselves,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have only 2 years or 3 years
Yeah.
on this
It's for
job and
it's
I'm
for a
out.
while. Yeah.
Yes, it's for a while. So
Yes.
it's you figuring it out, and some days may be tough. If you need to cry, cry,
Mm.
but move on quickly. And if you need to find someone to speak to there's a way having conversations with people can lighten your burden. There's a way we can learn from other people's experiences. You may
Yeah.
find the help you never knew you didn't have. So um beyond say writing, sometimes I'm not just always collecting stories, I'm also always collecting opportunities. I don't know, I have a
Mm.
thing for finding them, um for sharing them, because I never know who would need them. So I'm
Yeah.
even things that are not related to me. If you're within my circle and you're a musician, best believe I'm bugging you with links. Oh, go and apply for this. Oh, go and do. So that's what happens when if you, for instance, don't tell me that, oh, I'm interested in my music practice. Oh, I'm looking for this. Or I'm looking for that. I wouldn't know. And I would likely not be sharing such things with you. So just to emphasize that, like, don't think that, oh, sharing, they will know my issues, they will know. Sometimes it just
Mm.
makes you feel better, and you don't know what support that person may be
Mm.
able to give you.
Yeah. That's such a wonderful way to end,
Yes.
because I think one huge thing that artists who are immigrants need to have is community, because community helps you to make sense of
Mhm.
a strange world. It helps you make sense of a strange experience. So thank you. Thank you so
Like,
much
I'm
for
not
ending it on that
alone.
note.
We are all winging this together.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's so important. And that's one of the things that I struggled with when I first moved to Canada. I needed that community. So I
Mhm.
thank you for stressing that. And I also thank
You're
you for
welcome.
coming on the show
You're
and
welcome,
chatting with
Ola.
me. I'm so, so grateful.
When are we reading more stories from you?
Very soon. Very soon.
No pressure. I remember those days when you're always sharing stories on your blog. There were,
Yes.
so from afar, I would see and I'm like, how is this girl so prolific? Almost every week she had a chapter
Almost every week.
dropping.
I look back on those days and I'm like, girl, you have to get your act together.
Soon, soon, soon.
You
It
have
will
to get your act
happen.
together and do what you're supposed to do. But it will happen. I'm making a comeback. Gonna do this. So look out for me. Thank you so much, Tayo. I am so
You're
Temitayo. I
welcome.
keep calling you Tayo because I I'm used to calling you Tayo, but your full name is Temitayo, and I need to respect that. So thank you so much for
You're
coming on the
welcome.
show. I am so grateful.
You're welcome, Lola.
On the next episode, I'll be chatting with another inspiring artist. But before then, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think about this show and this episode. Feel free to drop me a note here or send me a DM on Instagram at Journey of the Art Pod. Finally, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or follow and rate the show if you're listening elsewhere. Help me connect with other artists who need a dose of inspiration today. Until next time, stay on the journey of your art.